Okay, we are now recording. And thanks for joining me this morning. Um, this is a phrase that I've been hearing, moving from SDE to enterprise. A lot of people have used that phrase. And I've heard this phrase being used multiple times. Um, it's about the changes that are going to be coming to DPU's GIS environment at some point. Um, and this phrase is not really correct, but it's also not incorrect. We can say it's only partially accurate. So the purpose of the presentation meeting today is just to make sure that you know what it really means when someone might be saying that you're moving from SDE to enterprise. So, you know, I almost might ask, before we begin here, the rhetorical question of, can anyone actually explain what the change is, what it means? I don't expect you to be able to answer that, but you know what? After this presentation, you should be able to. Uh, there's going to be actually a partial GIS history lesson that's going to go along with this. Um, just as much as it's an explanation of what moving from SDE to enterprise really means, because understanding the history of Esri's technology really helps put things in context of what this change means. It's the next evolution in the utility area for GIS technology out of Esri. So I'm also going to do something different I've never tried. I'm going to use blank PowerPoint slides and try to use them like a whiteboard to kind of draw things out. So if we were to all together in a room together and I was teaching a class or something, I'd probably be writing this stuff out on the board. So I'm going to give that a shot and hopefully that will work out all right. So the agenda, I'm going to talk about your current state. I'm going to talk about something called ArcGIS Server, which you may have heard of. I'm going to talk about, let me turn my camera off to eliminate distractions. I'll talk about ArcGIS Online, and then I'll talk about Enterprise. Then we'll dive into the Enterprise Network and what it is, and get into some of the weeds of it. And we talk about what the change really means. So without further ado, let me get a blank slate up here, and we'll just talk about your current state. So I'm going to do a bunch of copy pastes. So currently, you guys work with geodatabases, right? You've got 6 of them, and so you've got your different utilities. Each has its own geodatabase, and in your current state, you guys can use ArcMap, and you have connection files that you use to connect directly to the data, and you can edit and manage the information with ArcMap straight in the geodatabase. The other thing I would mention is the data model that your utility GIS information is in what's called the geometric network. So that's the data model that's used. But if we think about the future, the geometric network is no longer going to exist, and you're no longer going to be using ArcMap. And go to the next slide. Oh, not yet. So there's this phrase of move from SDE to enterprise. Your ability to move from the geometric network data format to the utility network and to be able to edit with ArcGIS Pro involves using enterprise. So there's no longer going to be a direct connection that you guys make to the database. Everything is going to be done through web services. And note, your data is still going to be managed in an SDE geodatabase. So SDE is not really going away. It's just a data model change in SDE that's going to occur, the data model known as utility network. So you may wish that Pro could use a direct connection that goes straight to the geodatabase like ArcMap did, but it doesn't work that way anymore for editing anyway. So I'm going to put another slide up or another piece of the puzzle in here. So we'll just pretend we take the water geodatabase and we convert it into the utility network data model. So it's still an SDE, it's a geodatabase. Now let me put in the next piece of the puzzle. So you guys have probably seen in the ESRI magazines or whatever it might be, a lot of times the portals, ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, they're represented with this cloud, right? So the cloud represents the internet and web services. And so the portal, ArcGIS Enterprise portal, can be represented as a cloud. But what's going on inside that is there are a number of utility network services. We'll talk about them later, but there are web services in the enterprise portal that are being served up, and they provide access to your geodatabase. So what's going to happen in the future is you're going to be using ArcGIS Pro to edit data in the utility network format in SDE, but the way you get to it is through the portal using GIS web services. Okay, let's talk a little bit about ArcGIS Server. So before we dive into the topic of ArcGIS Enterprise, I want to review what ArcGIS Server is first because it's relevant. ArcGIS Server, first of all, it came out way back in 2004, the year 2004. And as its name suggests, it's Esri's technology that allowed you to serve GIS data as web services. And these GIS web services could be used by other ArcMap users or in GIS applications or third-party apps, or they could be accessible through APIs. So ArcGIS Server actually supports access to the underlying SDE geodatabase information directly. So I'm going to put this together here. So here we go. You can pretend it's 2004. You have ArcMap. You can edit and communicate with your geodatabase. But then this new thing came along called ArcGIS Server. So ArcMap could be used to publish the data to in a web server with the software running on it, ArcGIS Server, which served it up to the internet. Okay, so this server here would be on premises in the city's data center, and the information from your GIS would be accessible through the internet. And as we mentioned, there were a number of different clients that could then have access to your GIS data. You could have other ArcMap users. You got web browsers, so you have web applications that could be getting it, or you could be getting access to the data through its APIs. So let me just show you real quick a REST endpoint. Whoops, I need to minimize that for a moment. And so here, what I want to point out in this web browser, so this is, I'm just browsing to the ArcGIS REST services directory. And so these are web services here, and we can see we've got a web service here that is the orthos, right? So here's the orthos. Let me go back and I'm going to grab this URL. So GIS services are accessible to and used within client applications like ArcGIS Pro. So here I am in ArcGIS Pro. We can add data to this client. And notice the web service is being served to this client, and we can use the orthos in ArcGIS Pro. So someday in the future, your utilities data, this is how it's going to be accessed. You're going to be accessing it as a web service. You're not going to be connecting to the database. You let the web server serve it up to you through ArcGIS Enterprise. Okay, I'll continue on with my story. We'll talk about ArcGIS Online now. So ArcGIS Online was the first sighting of what Esri called a portal. It came out in the year 2012, so it's been a decade. It was pretty immature at first. You couldn't do much with it, but it's really progressed over the years in their portal technology year after year. And the thing about ArcGIS Pro is that, again, there's that cloud, meaning it's the internet-based thing. It's not on-premise. It's not in the City Hall's data center. And the ArcGIS Online portal, just like the Enterprise portal, as we'll see, is where you can organize GIS data, you can make maps, you can do applications, and you can share and collaborate with your GIS information. So that was a really powerful idea for the GIS professional. And the idea of having to use ArcGIS server to serve up your information to the internet changed, because at that point, GIS professionals typically didn't have access to ArcGIS server, but behind ArcGIS Online, everybody can have an account and publish data up into the portal and create interactive maps and things like that for their end users. No need to print hard copy maps, distribute those things around. That's become not really the best way to share information in a hard copy format. So this was revolutionary because it allowed the GIS professionals to publish interactive web maps. And all the hosted layers are accessed through GIS web services. So everything you put in here, it's all services based. So DPU is accustomed to accessing GIS data through direct database connections. They might be file geodatabases, that we copy and move around, and we have our desktop products that connect to them. But that really should change and will change just because the way the technology is going. Let's see here. The other thing I would like to say is ArcGIS Online, while it's a portal, it's off premises. It doesn't have direct access back to your geodatabase. So anytime you want to refresh the data in ArcGIS Online, you have to republish it and refresh it. And as folks like Michael discovered in recent months, Esri has stopped support of publishing geometric networks data format to ArcGIS Online. So we have to do a big song and dance to convert the data, get rid of the geometric network before publishing. And so anyway, it has to use these republishing workflows. Go to my next slide. So here's a little bit of the history lesson. So you can see back in '99, that's when ArcMap came out. And then we had ArcGIS Server came out in 2004. And for a really long time, that's what we had. We had the desktop and we had server. until everything changed in 2012 when ArcGIS Online came along. And then 3 years later, they released ArcGIS Pro. And Pro is designed to work with portals. So whether it's ArcGIS Online or if it's Enterprise, ArcGIS Pro is the desktop tool of GIS professionals. So things didn't really change for us until 2015 when Pro came out, because it was designed specifically to work with ArcGIS Online, although you could still use ArcMap. It works with ArcGIS Online. But then later, Enterprise came out for on-site portals. So that happened in 2016. So Pro is the desktop tool for Enterprise. And we can say, if you look at this timeline, ArcMap has been around a long time. Pro is new. ArcMap is it's going to have to go away. Esri says they're going to deprecate it in 2026. We'll see if they stick to that timeline. So having spoken about the history there, let's jump into ArcGIS Enterprise. So Enterprise, as we saw, came out in 2016. And it is an on-premises portal, meaning Enterprise is installed and running in the City of Richmond's data center. It's not running in Amazon Web Services, for example, like ArcGIS Online would be. And so let me just demo real quick. I'm gonna log into, let me get rid of that. So here, this is logging into ArcGIS Online. You can see arcgis.com up here. So if I were to log into ArcGIS Online, just in case anyone who views this presentation later isn't familiar with it, this is what it looks like. So I can log in. I have a content button, so I can have a place where I organize all my content in folders and whatnot, and I have these GIS layers. I can have GIS mapping applications in here, but this is what the user interface looks like. We go to a different tab. I'm going to log into ArcGIS Enterprise. Let me put in my most current password here. Hopefully I didn't fat finger my keyboard. I did not. Okay, so I'm in. And if we go and look at the content here, it's the exact same format. They're both portals. They look the same. They pretty much behave the same. So if you're already familiar with ArcGIS Online, Enterprise, they're both portals. It's just one's external, one's internal. And the advantage of Enterprise being on premises as well is that it has many more capabilities through its licensing. So ArcGIS Online, we could say is free. It's not really free. It's just that it comes with access to it for anyone who has a Pro install. You automatically have access to ArcGIS Online. Enterprise, not so. And Enterprise has a lot of advanced functionality, including, guess what, the utility network. So let's put this together here. The first thing I would like to say and write out here for you on the whiteboard, and we're going to get in the weeds here a little bit, but I think it's good to know. So there's 4 base components. The first one is the portal server. So if I'm in the classroom and I'm drawing on the whiteboard, I'm going to draw a server machine here, and it's going to be called the portal. And portal is a component of the enterprise that allows you to share maps and applications and layers. It's that UI that we saw when we logged into ArcGIS Online and when we logged into ArcGIS Enterprise. It's that front end user experience, right? Where you can create maps and your layers and stuff like that. So it's the front end, but it's powered by a lot of things underneath it or behind the scenes. The second thing is web adapters. And what these are, this is an application that runs in the existing website, and it forwards your requests from the portal to one or more ArcGIS server machines. So remember, we talked about ArcGIS Server. Well, ArcGIS Server continues to exist. So I'm going to keep drawing here. So the 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 base deployment is going to include a host machine. And what the hosting server is, Esri calls it a federated server. It's an ArcGIS server, so it means it's what serves the web services. The GIS services are coming from that machine. And then the last thing I would mention in my drawing is you're going to have a data store. So the data store is just where, when you publish a layer up into ArcGIS Online, well, in that ArcGIS Online cloud, there's databases behind the scenes, and your data is actually getting stored in those databases, and that's called the data store. So this is out of the box, the basic setup for ArcGIS Enterprise. You have to have at least these 4 things. So if I were to be drawing again here, let me send this to the back. What you see highlighted under here, that's your base deployment. The middle tier, I want to add, what do I want to add? Sorry, guys. We're going to call this, just to give you your context here. So this is the ArcGIS server tier. We talked about what that is. The technology still exists, still around. And the terminology is that it's federated with the portal. Just think of it, they communicate. And you'll frequently see that familiar cloud icon. So you can almost say, the ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud. This is everything that's actually in the cloud, what's behind it anyway, what's making it work. So let's put in, you're not limited to having just this host server. You have to have the host server, but you can have additional ones. You can add as many as you want. So for example, we added one, we called it our map ArcGIS server. And, we've done things with it. We've published geocoding services. We've published the ortho service. So we can publish GIS services with additional ArcGIS servers that can kind of get, like, think of it, they can get daisy chained here, and they can all be federated with the portal. So technically, we could be using actually, let me drag this in. I got to finish my drawing. So remember over here, the host machine has a data store. Well, for any other additional federated servers, you can have an enterprise SDE geodatabase as a data store for those servers. So technically, if I wanted to, we could take the water geodatabase using the geometric network, the current geometric network format, not the utility network. We could use it as a data store with ArcGIS Server, and we could be using Enterprise right now. Right? You guys could be serving up and using Enterprise with any of your utilities. And in addition to that, you could continue to use ArcMap, and you could edit and maintain your data here. But we don't want to do that, because anything that's built on this model here is going to have to get thrown away when the utility network comes out. So let me see here. Paste in a new thing. So we don't want to do this. We could, and I'm sure people do, but we don't want to do that. So that is not a good idea because it's just going to create more work and break everything in the long run. So having said we don't want to do that, let's delete that, get that out of the way. So here we still have our portal. We've got our host server. The host server has its data store. We've got a federated additional ArcGIS server machine. This is what we currently look like. Let's see here. I'm going to drag into the picture here something new we haven't seen yet. So each of these circles represents an ArcGIS server machine. We could have a federated utility network server machine for the water utility. You can federate an ArcGIS server that is licensed with the utility network extension. So this server will have that utility network extension, software extension. The city owns it. It comes with our enterprise agreement. And the thing I want you to point out here is that it comes, when you do that, the utility network extension is going to come with 4 services. So we're really getting in the weeds here, but there's a utility network service. There's you can get a network diagram service. There's a feature service, which is used for editing, and a version management, which is also supporting editing. And for any utility network server, it will require an associated or corresponding SDE geodatabase as its data store. But the water geodatabase, notice it has to be in utility network format. So the geometric network format you currently have, it goes away. And now, having done this, let me move this down so we can continue to draw. Draw this in here. Everything in red is new, if you haven't gathered that. Your editors of your water utility network can be ArcGIS Pro users who are hitting the portal cloud, right? That's how they're getting to the data. You can have people in the field that can actually edit data. Okay, they're doing the same thing. They're using the portal services, and you could have other custom web maps if you or apps if you chose to do so. Let me see what my next slide looks like real quick. Okay. So the utility network is accessed through a combination of services to support the utility network workflows. So very briefly, the utility network service, this guy right here, it's what provides the tracing capabilities on the network. It manages what's called the subnetworks and the tiers, and it validates that your topology is good, that everything's connected together and it's not disconnected, because that would have a negative impact on your ability to trace things through your network. The network diagram service, as it describes, you guys are going to have network diagrams of your data. So the engineers might like to uh, benefit from having network diagrams. Those come with the utility network now. Feature service. So that provides the capability to apply operations such as editing and querying, things like that GIS professionals know how to do. And then the version management service. So you guys know what versioning is. Same thing. It's just that there's a special service that's done that allows multi-user editing. And so having put this together, just imagine in the future, we might come along, if we started with water, the next thing we do, maybe we move on and we bring the sewer utility into the scene. So we have a sewer utility network ArcGIS server, and we've changed its geodatabase to the utility network, and it is accessible through GIS web services, right? And then as it goes, maybe the next one will be the stormwater. Okay, and each of these, they're all federated with the portal. So when we go to the utility, the utility network eventually, it's not going to happen all at once. It's the purpose here. Okay, we're gonna have to pick and choose which utilities go in which order. We're gonna learn as we go. Um, it's not going to be a huge change for everybody all at once. But anyway, let's go to the next slide. So what is the utility network? It's a bunch of things. It is a new geodatabase model. That's going to be a lot of work just on its own right. It's going to require the use of ArcGIS Enterprise, and we're going to have to federate utility network utility servers. It's all web-based, web services based. And you can only manage data and services in your portal using ArcGIS Pro. And it enables better sharing of your network across the entire organization because you're not dealing with a bunch of file geodatabases that you're copying all around or having connections directly to the database. It makes it easier to share the data. So utility network is a lot of things. It's going to be a lot of change. So look at it this way. This is your current situation that we started off with, right? You're an editor, you have a connection to the database, you edit. Well, things are going to get much more sophisticated and complicated. Whoops, let me get that out of the way. I pasted in the wrong thing. Okay, let me keep drawing here. So if we look at the future, okay, we've got our base deployment of the of ArcGIS Enterprise, which we talked about. Beyond the base setup, utility network servers will be federated over time, as we talked about. So what that might end up looking like over time is something like this, right? We have all these utility network ArcGIS servers that are all federated. They're serving up your data from your SDE geodatabases to the portal. And then you have access to all of utilities data using ArcGIS field maps. So this is the field workers tool or APIs or other desktop users. This would be the editors along with anyone who's an office worker and any web browsers. So any web applications that get created. So as DPU gradually moves away from the desktop, DPU will have to reskill everybody that uses GIS right now. Everyone's going to have to get new skills. So we're actually instituting an effort that we're calling the utility network preparation. I guess it's like a project with the intent for the DPU GIS group, along with the DIT GIS, to begin to learn and educate ourselves about the utility network. We're probably going to attempt to do a pilot using the water utility as our pilot study because we have a lot to learn. To go from this on the left to this over here on the right is a big, big deal. And Esri's pushing everything this way. So my last slide, I like the sound of this better than the phrase moving from SDE to enterprise. Basically, DPU is going to be moving to the utility network, right? SDE is not going away. It's still a thing. It still exists. It's the data store that's needed to support the utility network. So it's more accurate, and there's a ton of details underneath this phrase utility network, as hopefully I've described. So having said all that, I'm going to stop my recording, and then we can field any, or actually let's field any questions. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. I can see you in the Teams meeting if you want to ask a question. Hopefully Andrew has a question.
It's not so much a question as a just a an additional thought on if you could go back to slide 10 for a second. So we went through all of the setup part of this, right? And it seems like a big lift to go from our current setup to this. And while we can see those icons for the benefit we're going to get out of it, um, if we want to think about the tangible benefit we get by doing this change, um, it's that specifically you're going to have your users able to edit things in the field much more easily than they can do so right now. So this move from to use ArcGIS Enterprise allows them to use both ArcGIS's field editing apps, but also connect to them without having to log into the VPN. They just get to use whatever normal internet connection they have, and they don't have to hit that choke point of the VPN anymore. Um, Additional to that is that utility network, that data model provides workflows for us. So we don't have to come up with additional business processes for how to get our data edited, how to get our data updated. All of those are built into those apps and into ArcGIS Pro, so we don't have to spend all of the time figuring out those things ourselves and then coding them ourselves. We just have to figure out. We just have to add the new skills of those web applications and ArcGIS Pro, which is already an understood process that's documented for us. So it would save us. It'll save us a lot of time and a lot of effort.
But it's a lot.
It is a lot. It's
Yes.
still a
Thank
lot,
you.
but it
Yeah.
saves
Yeah.
us a lot more.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Anyone else? Okay. Well, not seeing any hands, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off the recording.